My name is Victor. I am the occult technician, and this is Mind War. Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Join the Mind War today. Enlist at patreon.com/mindwar. Now, back to the show. Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Folks, it's nice to be back here in the Mind War studios. It's been almost a month since I've been down here recording. As most of you know, I record many of my episodes in advance. And it's been several weeks. I've been on sort of a staycation. My Gemini twins, my children, are here visiting. They're over at the Mind War Manor, caring for Father Mind War. It's been a really nice visit from them. We are reconnecting, and we had a great birthday party for Father Mind War. All of his brothers and sisters made it, so I saw my cousins, my siblings were there, their children were all there. It was a great gathering. All the neighbors came. There were probably 40, almost 50 people there. It felt really great to kind of reconnect with family and friends. That's been really wonderful. And I wanted to just take some time to make sure that I enjoyed their visit. And again, it feels good to be back here in the studio. So over the last few weeks, there's been, of course, all sorts of things in the news, all sorts of headlines that were capturing the world's attention. And I thought, man, all of these things we could be talking about on the Mind War podcast. And I took all sorts of notes, and I had a list, and I was, finding clips and everything. And I thought, that's not necessarily what the purpose of this series on magic is for, is really dealing with current events. We've done a few, but I wanted to kind of not get too bogged down in current events that are happening right now. But I do want to bring up something that I've seen a few videos recently that were very concerning. And basically what I saw were videos from African American men. And they were of different socioeconomic categories, classes, right? So I saw a video from an African-American man who seemed to be very well educated. He was very articulate. He kind of was dressed like Mr. Rogers, and he's walking through a suburban neighborhood. And the message that he was talking about in his flowery academic, language was that of white genocide. And basically talking about how he wants to completely destroy the white race. And I thought, well, this is interesting. Hearing it from a man who sounds so well educated and is so soft spoken. And again, walking around in a little sweater vest, it was very strange. It was strange to see that. Now, I saw another video from an African-American man who was part of the lower socioeconomic class, a thug, if you will. Dirty Dreads, I think, is kind of a moniker that these men are taking. He had his yellow teeth. He was talking in Ebonics. And he was saying the same message, this genocide of the white race, this complete destruction of every white person on the planet, right? And so I thought that was strange. You have two African American men, and again, I call them African American to remind them where they came from. So one of the things that caught my attention from both of their diatribes, from both of their rants, they both said the exact same sentence. Now, again, one speaking as an eloquent academic, the other speaking Ebonics as a thug, but they both said this sentence, and this is what they said. There will be no compromise with these people, period. They both said that. Now, these people in their sentence is us, the white race, right? And they said there will be no compromise with us. There will be no negotiations, no working with us, no trying to find common ground. No, there will be no compromise is what they said. I thought that was interesting. And in a way, I wanted to thank them for saying that. Because ultimately, we hear about this all the time of a coming civil war, right? Some type of conflict here in the West. And what we heard from these African American men is basically the rules that they're setting out for this coming conflict. They've laid it out very clearly for us that there will be no compromise with the white race. And I think in some ways we need to thank them for putting it so clearly, so distinctly, what their thoughts and plans for us are. Because now the table has been set. The rules have been agreed upon. Because again, if there is no compromise on their side, then there will be no compromise from us as well. But I think the problem in that they don't quite understand, and I don't just mean they as the African American, but anyone who thinks this way, because of course there are so many people in the white race and other races who call themselves white, who believe the same thing, who are working towards the genocide of the white race. We have to thank them for setting the table. But again, it's this isn't a warning. It's just a reminder to them. The white man hasn't even got off the couch yet. We're still just watching and observing. We haven't even begun to prepare for this conflict. And if you continue down this path, and you don't decide to maybe tone down the rhetoric and find a way to compromise with the white race, and ultimately we have to get off the couch and deal with this situation, I don't think you understand what would happen. Because again, one of the things about white folk is that we are very industrious. Your defeat will be on an industrial scale. We will do it methodically. We will do it brutally, but it will be with no emotions, no passion. We will just do the work that needs to be done in order to bring back order to our streets, in order to secure our homeland, in order to secure our friends and our family, making sure that they have a safe place to continue to live, to where we will not be dealing with these type of threats anymore. It's going to be horrific if this is where you continue to, if this is the path you want to continue on. Again, not a warning, just more of an information. We're just letting you know. It's going to end badly for you. You have plenty of time to change your mind, make other plans, maybe return home if that's what it means. But continuing to push us towards some type of, internal conflict here in the United States is going to end badly for you. And I really hope that you all come to your senses. The reason that I talk about that in this episode, at the beginning of this episode, before we get back into our work here, is because, again, what we are doing here in the Mind War podcast is laying the foundation for a new culture, a new society, if you will. Because the one that we are currently in is no longer sustainable. These separate groups constantly at odds with each other, constantly struggling with each other, and basically one-sided, where there are folks like us who are constantly being gaslit, who are constantly being told that we are the enemy, that we are the bad people. It's just not sustainable. It's not going to work for much longer. And again, what we do here in the Mind War is we say there is a different way. There's a third way. That's why we push back against these organizations, corporations, and institutions that pollute our minds, poison our bodies, and corrupt our souls. We see where they have led us. It doesn't have to be this way. So, with that being said, let's get back to the work at hand, creating a new culture. All right, folks, let's pick up where we left off in the book Magic, History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. We left off on page 82, and we begin with this. The people, the Volk of the magician, are always opposed to abstract humanity and random multiplicity, and at first are therefore conceived just as evil as the magician himself. And again, for those of you who are watching this, and maybe you heard what I said at the beginning of this episode, that may be considered evil, what I just said. That we are going to stand up for our race, and we are not going to allow it to be destroyed by these monsters. It's not going to happen. Now, the mainstream will say what I am saying is evil. They allow the other videos that talk about genociding the white race, no problem. Yep, thousands, tens of thousands of views, thousands of likes, no big deal, lots of comments saying, here we go, no big deal. But when I say we're going to defend ourselves against this, and we're going to do it in a brutal industrial size scale, no, that's evil, of course, right? And what we're talking about here, what the author is saying here is, again, the people, the Volk, all of us, the Volk of the magician, are always opposed to abstract humanity. This idea that humanity, that we're all equal, and we all deserve a place at the table, that's not true. That's the abstract part of humanity. The fact is, humanity, the majority of it, is awful and monstrous. They live at an animal level. Their instincts are barely that above animals. They're violent. They're uneducated. They're unable to be educated. That's humanity. And this random multiplicity, aka the mixing, the melting pot, right? No more random multiplicity. No more abstract humanity. We need to focus primarily and solely on those of us who support each other, love each other, care for each other. That's our humanity. And again, when we stand up to the mainstream, we are called evil. Not until the magical world is consolidated and has prevailed will the satanic root be latent. that is to say, impalpable, and everything which happens in accordance with this world is also now appearing, even to the most harmless mind, as good, just as the most intense movement appears as standing still if the whole environment is moving in the same direction. Again, we saw over the last decade or so, maybe more, the open hatred and racism towards the white race. Openly. Mainstream, the government, academia, corporations, all of them openly hating white people. Openly talking about our destruction. Easily out in the open across the biggest airwaves, billions of dollars of media promotion towards this message. And yet when we speak out about it and say it ain't going to happen, we're the evil ones. For them, it's no problem because they're all going in the same direction. They're all marching in the same beat. They're all living by the same slogans. And it's no problem out there. Well, that's just the mainstream thought. Genociding the white race, no big deal, right? They all support it. Not any longer, man. This harmless mind. They think it's harmless because they're all saying the same thing. They think it's no big deal. It is to us. And we're watching very closely. We're listening to every word you say. And as I've told you before, we will never forget and we will never forgive. But someday, every magical people, that is to say, every culture, falls prey to the opposing forces. Even if these should have spared the magician himself. This end appears as the ghost of the Antichrist, of whom all magical people knew and whose entrance into his world he would be like to postpone as long as possible until the end of times. The Antichrist, in so many ways, much like this idea of Satan, this opposing force that comes against you. Now again, Satan is more of that personal obstacle in your life, where the Antichrist is more of this universal figure that will come and oppose everyone in the world. They will be there to constantly be a burden for the world. And it's interesting to see. We hear that the Antichrist will take the throne of the New World Order. I personally can't wait to see it happen. Now this next paragraph I highlighted here, it says, the magician is the heroic man who, despite being conscious of his tragic lifeline, is still following it for the will of the demon who is pushing him. Now, I haven't had too many tragedies in my life, and I'm thankful for that. I've had my difficulties. I've had my share of hard times. I often find myself thinking that I may be on the wrong timeline, right? If we think of this multiverse idea where there's, infinite amount of options for your life, man, I found myself on a weird one. But I continue to push through. I keep fighting. It's why I'm down here today. In my mid to now late 40s, doing a podcast from supposedly one of Adolf Hitler's favorite books. We're basically talking about Nazi magic here in 2025. How I found myself here, it's the amazing story that I've been sharing with all of you. but it is an example of continuing to push forward. And I like to think that my efforts here on the Mind War podcast of speaking out against all that has been coming against us over these last few years, and doing it in a time, again, during the last administration where this type of communication was frowned upon, to say the least. Myself having the courage to stand up and say these things. You having the courage to view this podcast and hear my message. Along with so many others who are like-minded and who are courageous enough to do the same. Because we did that, I believe that we are seeing change in this country right now. It's very slow. It's not quite as brutal as I had hoped it would be. But we're seeing some type of change. Now, of course, it's we have to be careful. We understand the people that are in charge always play both sides of the game. So we cannot be complacent, but we need to continue with our message that culture, society are changing, that the world is moving away from these divisive religions. We see small incidences where there may be little revivals here and there. But ultimately, through our discussions with these people who believe in these religions, who believe in societal and cultural propaganda and nonsense, we can work them through this the same way that I had to work through it personally myself, the same struggle that all of you are going through. Removing the societal, cultural, and religious wet blankets off of our minds, freeing our minds to finally think clearly for the first time in our lives, and to explore information we've been told that is evil and that we're not supposed to be participating in. This is part of the mind war. This is really, I think, our main focus, our main goal, is helping people free their minds to see things differently. And we do all this for the will of the demon who is pushing us. Now again, if there is an angel of peace, an angel of contentment and tranquility, then on the other side of his pendulum is the demon of wrath, the demon of war, the demon of anger, the demon of hate. And as long as there are opposing forces out there talking about wanting to genocide our race, then we cannot be our angelic selves. We have to be pushed by our demons. And it is those demons who are pushing me to spread this message today. The magician is the climax of mankind, is a nucleus of the highest ectropic force, and therefore appears as an embodiment of the last cosmic meaning, an ambassador of the deity. This is a perfect time here. We're going to read some of these notes that I put in here. Okay. So we're talking about demons who are pushing us. We are, as magicians, the climax of mankind, meaning that we are the highest form of man. And we are the embodiment of this last cosmic meaning and an ambassador of the deity. Now, we've talked a little bit about possession, right? And so this is something that I wrote when I was reading this book the first time. It says, in these pages, the author discusses the demon to the author discusses allowing the demon to manifest within us, or become one with either the magician or an object like a statue. Okay, we talked about that. You can charge symbols and statues with these spirits, but we can also allow them to manifest within inside of us. When the demon is allowed to enter the physical body of the magician, a transformation begins to take place. The demon is graciously welcomed by the magician into his body and mind, acting as a physical representation of the demon. Again, when we are responding to the hate that is coming towards us, we allow the demon to take hold within us and push us forward as we meet our opponents and the forces that are coming against us. Not by simple possession, wherein the demon is given full control to steal our physical body. We don't just turn ourselves into a puppet to be played by these demons. No. Again, it's manifestation. Or it's a communion. Apology. It says this is a binding transformation. In our physical bodies, the cells of our various organs are renewed at varying rates. This means that once you have welcomed new spirits into your being, the physical body will now be renewed and transformed. A new physical body is created with a new spirit within it. What that means, and again, I don't know the exact timeline, but all of our organs, our bones, our muscles, our skin, everything is replaced and regenerated constantly. I think one of our organs is replaced, all the cells of that organ are replaced almost weekly or monthly or something like that. They're dying off and rebuilding, right? I think it's our liver or kidney or something. It's very quick. I believe even our skeletal system, I think it takes like 7 years where it kind of dies off and builds new again. 7 to 10 years from now, your physical body isn't going to be the same physical body you're in right now. The physical body you are in right now all the cells that make it up will have all died and have been regenerated into new ones. So as you are going through your spiritual transformation, there's also a physical transformation happening as well. And as your new physical body is constantly being regenerated, you are regenerating it with a new spirit inside. And that's important. That's important to focus on and understand that you can change. You don't have to stay stuck in that old way of living, in that old way of thinking, right? The cosmic forces, in realizing their becoming an image, always depend on a particular eye center. Conversely, every eye center would be ineffective if it would not be pulsated with cosmic energies. Hereupon rests the interaction and mutual conditionality of demon and magician, or of God and human. I highlighted this next sentence here. Without the magician, the demonic forces would have never reached embodiment. And without the demon, the magician would be bare of any kind of deep forces. Again, the demons, they are simply characters that man has created in order to explain the human condition. All of the different feelings and emotions that we have that drive us forward in life, those are demonic or angelic. It depends on what is driving you. It depends on your perception of life. It depends on your aristos. What is the situation that you're dealing with? We find ourselves in a situation, again, as white people, as the white race, where there are a lot of haters out there. They're coming against us. right or wrong, it doesn't matter. And as magicians, we commune with these feelings, with these demonic feelings. We allow them to drive us and move forward and to be successful in all our endeavors. This fact was still well known to the late mystics of the Middle Ages, and Angelus Silius wrote a much cited verse about it. I highlighted this next section here. It says, out of the mutual conditionality of demon and magician grows the necessity of association between them, which can increase from the simplest emotional immersion up to bloody bodily unification, depending on the intensity and image power of the acting energies. Again, the first form of mutual conditionality between the demon and the magician, in its simplest form, is emotional immersion. Simply feeling our emotions, harnessing those emotions instead of spilling them. Again, if you're sad, if you're depressed, if you're angry, and the way that you deal with those emotions is by drinking, doing drugs, or some other type of addictive behavior that's going to destroy you. Okay? That's how we've been taught to do it, most people, right? Instead of doing that, if we harness those energies, we hold on to them, we crystallize them within ourselves, and then we use that energy to create art, to create podcasts, to create a business, whatever it is that you might want to do with your emotional energy. That's what we're talking about here. It's that simplest form of communion between man and demon. And if you go deep enough, like I just said, those new spiritual forces that you've allowed into your life, as your physical body renews itself over time, those new spiritual forces, they'll be a permanent part of you now. And you're just going to get stronger and healthier, more intelligent, more focused. It's the beauty of the work that we do. Between demon and magician, that is to say, between the paracosmic forces and the pertaining empirical body, wherein these are acting, exists a continuous polar tension, which on the one hand manifests itself in the creation of an enormous distance by making the image of the demon as enormous, as big, as distant, and unfamiliar as possible. And on the other hand, by arranging the amalgamation with this demon, or with this image, the communion, as immense and complete. Okay. There's always going to be a polar tension. Because again, often these emotions that are described, these human characteristics that are described as demons, they're often, sometimes they're difficult emotions to deal with. Sometimes they feel emotionally painful, right? Anger, for most people, is not a feeling that they enjoy. Now, I have lived with anger for so long that there was a time in my life where being angry felt better to me than being happy. It was more important for me to feel the hatred and the anger and the frustration than it was to feel content. I often felt if there was contentment in my life, it was difficult for me to feel content because I always knew that, tomorrow I got to go back to work, a place that I hate, with people that I hate. I don't want to do this, right? So how can you feel happy even for a moment if knowing tomorrow you're going to have to go back and it's going to suck, right? And that was a tough place to be in. And it wasn't just work. It was so many things, or relationships, whatever it may have been in, right? All of these things that I felt so angry and upset about, I communed with that. I became one with the anger. And it's a tough way to live when it's being forced upon you that way. So many things in my past, again, it was some small decisions, very quick decisions that I made early on in life that set me on a path for the next 20 years. And at some point early on, I kind of realized, oh shit, I'm in this for the long run, whether I like it or not. And often I did not like the situation I was in. And I found it easier to just stay angry than to try to even be happy for a moment. I think a good way to describe this, a good analogy, I guess, is when I was in boot camp, they took us, I don't know if I've told this story already, but they took us to a professional baseball game. We went and saw the San Diego whatever. And I remember when we left the base and we went to this stadium, the drill instructor said, relax for a little bit, enjoy yourselves. Of course, don't get crazy or anything, but kind of, you get to relax a little bit. And I refused to. I didn't want to let my guard down and relax because I knew that as soon as the game was over, we're going back to the hell of boot camp. I didn't want to let my guard down. And honestly, I lived that way for the next 20 years, with my guard up, constantly being ready and agitated for the attack, for the fight. I even lived that way when I returned home for quite a while. It took me a while, probably a year or two to kind of really calm down once I got here. Searching for that place of contentment and tranquility, hoping that that's what I was going to find here. And in many ways we did. Because remember, I returned home in 2018, hoping that life was just going to be chill. I was going to have a nice, maybe semi-retirement. And then the 2020 lockdowns happened. And now I was forced right back into it. I was forced right back into this high state of alert because of outside impending danger. And in so many ways, I've stayed at that alert level. Maybe that's just what life is going to be. I highlighted this next section as well. It says, and as you can see, this section that we're going through here, this real immersion with the demons, this invocation and possession, being possessed by these demonic spirits, if you will. This was important to me when I was going through this book for the first time, almost 4 years ago now. I knew the importance of it. I knew that that's what I was looking for. And I found it. Just like in the movie Hellraiser, when the man finds that box, he knows what he was looking for. He knows what he knew exactly what he was in for. So did I. And this is the result. The man you're seeing today is the result of a man who 3 years ago, who was down on his luck, who was in a really bad place, said, no more. I'm going to go find some answers. I'm going to become something new. And these are the words that led me to where we are today. The bodily communion or the sacrifice is carried out in a way that the magician is either inducing the appearance of the demon on a hallucinatory basis and thereby unifying himself with him, or that he is using an imago spurious, That is to say, an object of the empirical environment upon which the demonic force complex is projected. The bodily communion or the sacrifice. We are the sacrifice. We've talked about this before. Sacrifice isn't killing something else as an offering to a god. Wrong. Sacrifice is giving up your old way of life. Giving up the comforts. Again, I could be upstairs playing video games, smoking weed, doing whatever, not doing any of this, not saying radical and extreme things on the internet that ultimately, at some point in the future, may be very detrimental to my freedom. I could be upstairs just fucking chilling, man. I don't have to be doing any of this. But it's the sacrifice I've made. Because I know this is what's right. I know these words have to be said. This message has to be promoted to the people. Because we cannot continue to carry on with the nonsense that is in our culture and in our society right now. It has to change. And it has to be dramatic. And that change is going to be brutal for a period of time. You have to prepare yourself for it now. This sacrifice is carried out in a way that the magician is either inducing the appearance of the demon on a hallucinatory basis. We talk about that. It's part of getting into the state of somnambulance. The psilocybin from the THC or from the magic mushrooms, in combination with the THC, in combination with the hypnosis of the Gateway Experience tapes, with your breathing work, with your kundalini, with the hypnotic music, using the stare and the other techniques we talk about in the future episodes. This is how we induce these hallucinatory images. We start to see things. We see them as demons in the mirror. We face our demons in the black mirror. And these hallucinatory images, they unify us with the demon. Or we cast the demon, we welcome them, we give them a vessel to maintain instead of our living body, where again we act as representatives of these dynamic or these demonic forces. Again, we are the representation of the demonic forces. We bring them to life by allowing them to work through us. Or we can welcome them into an object. The symbols, the logos you see here in front of me or behind me. We welcome them into these objects. And they now hold all of the information that we are conveying. We've talked about that before. Both forms are historically attested. J.W. Hauer writes about this. We know unambiguously from various sources that the gods appeared to the worshippers and filled them with strength and enthusiasm, in order that the sinner or thinker felt himself unified with the deity during the sacrifice. The excited singers report again and again that they had come and did their deeds in companionship and friendship with the sacrifice makers. They lead the way and escorted them. It seems reasonable to assume that primitive yoga was above all else a summoning of the gods. Okay. So again, that author, J.W. Hauer, was talking about the different ways that you can get into a state of being that allow you to invoke these spiritual forces. Invoke the emotions within you. Stir up your emotions to get you to get off the fucking couch and do something. That's all we're talking about. And he's talking about singers, people singing. Of course, we see that. Music is a major driver of human emotions. You listen to the music, you get excited, you get angry, you harness that energy, and then you go make change in your life. Or simply doing things like yoga, where again, you're focusing, you're calming your mind, you're allowing these deities and these spiritual forces to come within you, even if they are simply spirits of peace and love and tranquility and strengthening through your yoga exercises, right? These are all different ways to allow yourself to transform. And when we come back, we're going to continue down my magical journey over on Instagram at The Occult Technician in just a moment. All right, welcome back, folks. We're going to continue on my magical journey over on Instagram at The Occult Technician. You're going to scroll all the way down to a post from June 4th, 2023 titled, "You Are Not a Hero." Now, this post was basically ripped from the headlines at the time. There was a man named Daniel Penny, who was a Marine veteran, who I believe this was New York City. He found himself on the subway. There again was an African-American man who was unable to control himself and had violent tendencies, and he was harassing other people who were there on the subway. And Daniel Penny decided to take it into his own hands and stop this man from, being violent towards the other riders of the subway. He put him in a chokehold. Now, ultimately, I do not believe the chokehold is what killed him. I think what happened is when the police officers arrived, they gave him several doses of epinephrine because they thought he was maybe overdosing on drugs, and I think that's ultimately what killed him. But I believe the black guy died, and then Daniel Penny was taken to court, ultimately acquitted, but he was threatened with jail time for trying to stop a violent man from attacking people on the subway. Now, in my message from the video titled "You Are Not a Hero," you can watch it on Instagram, I tell you that Daniel Penny is not a hero in that case. Because what he did is he stopped the people on the subway, all the subway riders that he was trying to protect. And now maybe not all of them, but I'm guessing some of them. They voted for the leaders in New York City who allowed that black man, that African-American man, who has had several run-ins with the law and should have not been free at all. They allowed him to be on that subway. So again, if you vote for leaders who allow criminals like this to run free in your city, that's what you want. You want to be harassed by insane criminals every day who have violent tendencies, because that's what you're voting for. And Daniel Penny took that away from them. He tried to stop this man from violently attacking them. But that's what they wanted because they vote for it over and over and over again. And that's why he was not a hero. He took away from them what they deserve. In that message, I told you, do not put yourself in danger for anyone who is not your direct family member or friend that you care enough to put your life on the line for. Do not assist any stranger ever. Do not come to their rescue, because as far as you know, they hate you for who you are. They hate you for what you are. So why are you going to put yourself, your family, and your friends, and in this case, your fellow veterans, in danger? Let them wallow in the filth that they created. That was my message. And I stand by it today. The next post from June 9th, 2023. This is a great picture. This is a picture. I'm standing by my fence in the backyard. My arms are out to my sides. My legs are down straight in a crucifix style shape, right? And what's interesting is one half of my shirt is black and white. The other half is white and black. Those are two separate pictures that I divided and kind of cropped back together. This was, again, that early work that I had done, kind of doing these digital manipulation of photos. I really, really like this picture. I think it turned out great. And I put a quote there from one of my favorite bands called All Out War. The song is called For Those Who Were Crucified. And it says this: "For those who were crucified, we shall drown in flames. All their pain and suffering, and we are all to blame." That's right, man. Often those who are crucified are those who are trying to stand up against the current culture, society, and religion, and we pay the price for it. Just like we got done talking about. You will be called evil. The Volk of the magician will be called evil because we are standing up against the mainstream. And again, the current mainstream today is out there telling us that the white race is inferior and deserves to be destroyed. That's the mainstream message in the world today. We hear it from the organizations, corporations, and institutions. It's open, blatant racism, and it's insane. And when we stand out against it, we are the ones who are crucified for it. But just like we know with the myth of Jesus Christ, he didn't die on the cross, and neither will we. The next video, this is a fun one. So this one is called Tarot Cards Are Gay. That's the title. It's from June 9th, 2023. I'm sitting at the table. I'm using the tarot cards, and I'm playing a clip from one of my favorite podcasts called Come Town. Now, the boys over from the Come Town podcast, they have ultimately become some of the three worst comedians in comedy right now. I'm not even going to go into it. It's very sad to kind of see the state that they've turned themselves into. But I thought this was a fun video. Go check it out on Instagram. Basically, they're talking about how doing tarot cards and stuff is gay. I thought it was funny as hell. So go ahead and watch that one. The next post we're going to look at is June 11th, 2023. And this is another occult sermon. Okay, so that first video that we talked about, You Are Not a Hero, that was what I titled the occult sermon. This was before the Mind War podcast began. I knew I wanted to get in front of the camera. I had the podium here. And I thought, okay, the series I'm going to call Occult Sermons. I'm basically giving a sermon about different issues that occurred, okay? So again, this one, June 11th, 2023, this is an extremely personal video. Please go and watch it over on Instagram. It's titled Forgiveness is a Sin. In this video, I communicate the story of my ex-wife, the mother of my Gemini twins. She was brutally abused at the hands of her own father for over a decade. My guess was her entire life. She didn't remember much until she turned about 8 or 9. The brutality, the stories, and the damage that was done was awful. Ultimately, again, I tell the story here. We found this man, of course, as soon as my ex-wife told about what was happening. He went on the run, and we hunted him down, had him arrested. He went to prison for 15 years. And basically what I was saying here is forgiveness is a sin, and I believe that, right? The Bible teaches us the opposite. They say turn the other cheek, forgive and forget, and it's the biggest lie. If you have learned that filth and garbage from the Bible, you have to get it out of your mind now. Never forgive. Never forgive those who have come against you. Never forget the pain and suffering that they caused you. Because if you do, all you're going to do is set yourself up to be a victim again. And that's difficult because the result of the abuse that my ex-wife, the result of the abuse that she took, ultimately she turned a lot of that on me. I became the father figure in her life, and she hated me for much of our marriage. She made it very clear that I was her enemy. And for the longest time, I was very upset about it. But I had to move past it. Because with maturity, I realized that she wasn't angry with me. She was in fear of her father. Do I forgive her for that? Hell no. It's why she's not a part of my life today, other than casual texts and conversations every few months. We're cordial, we're friendly, but I'm never going to forgive her for the damage that she did. And I'm never going to forget what happened, because I'm not going to allow myself to be put back in that situation. Let's go on to our next post, again from June 11th, 2023. I was a busy boy back then. This is titled, I'll Never Stop. This is when I got my first 1,000 followers, which that number has barely moved. I think I just am over 1,200 now. It's again, I'm not going to sit here and cry about being shadow banned and all sorts of stuff. I know the things I talk about on this podcast are extreme and radical. Of course, they're not going to be promoted if I'm not paying big money for it. But this was just a fun little video that I made, kind of promoting some of my t-shirts over at Victory Work Apparel on Etsy. Make sure you find the link in the podcast description there. And it was just a fun video, all sorts of different styles that I had. And the video that you hear in the background, again, William Montgomery, one of my favorite comedians, he went on this little diatribe, this little rant, and someone put it to music. I thought it was really fun. So again, check that out. That post is titled, I'll Never Stop, from June 11th, 2023. And then if, again, the next post, again, from June 11th, 2023, you will see me in all of those different styles in one single photo, and I call it The Disciples. So there I am, Victor. I'm standing in the middle with the sigil artwork here behind me, and then there are 6 victors on my right and 6 victors on my left. They are the disciples. Okay, so what does that mean? So I don't have 12 buddies to hang out with that can help me do the work that we're doing here in the Mind War podcast. It's just me, right? I've had some outside help from Sean over at X-Silence Studios. He's produced some of the music that we have here, the intro and outro music. And of course, I've had help here and there throughout the process, but the majority of it I have to do myself, right? 99% of it. And what I found with this image, with creating 12 different versions of myself, as I said, each one of those is, one is the video editor, one is the accountant, one is the house cleaner, right? One is the exercise guru. All of them, all the different versions of me play a vital role in the success of this operation. And again, not every one of them can be Victor, the star of the show, right? That's me. That's me here right now. But again, when I leave here, I have to go do the dishes and take out the trash and cut the grass just like everybody else. And that was an example. This is what it means when I multiply myself like that and show all of you the different versions of myself all in one photo. And it's the same for you. And the beauty is like we've talked about all the way back from season 1 of the Mind War podcast, is that some of those individual versions of yourself, they're your intelligence agent, man. They're holding your secrets. They're going to be the ones that are putting on characters when they go out to their work or when they deal with their family and their friends. They're going to act different ways, and that's okay. Be whoever you need to be in whatever situation you're in to make sure that you reap the benefits of that situation, right? There's no shame in fooling those around you, if that's what it means to be successful. So I think that's where we're going to leave off today. That was the last one from June 11th, 2023. Again, that post was titled The Disciples. It feels great, again, folks, to be back here in the Mind War studios. I think this was a interesting back to work episode. I'm recording this on a Saturday. My goal is to have this edited tonight and uploaded for release tomorrow. This is one of the fastest recordings to release that I've done here on the podcast. And it feels good to kind of get back into the flow of things. We're going to try to record a few more episodes today, and we're going to keep moving on with this series. And as soon as we get done with this theory section and get into the practice section of the book Magic, History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl, I have been saving up all sorts of fun things, all sorts of magical techniques that I've been itching to tell you all about, but I didn't want to just say everything in the beginning of this series. I know I needed to save some of the important things towards the end. So I'm excited to get into the practical application of magic so we can really start sharing some magical techniques, right? Some more of the the deeper techniques. So I look forward to that. I appreciate you being here. And as always, remember, folks, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War.